The rain had started before sunset and hadn't stopped. It ran down the big front windows of the diner in thin, shiny lines, turning the streetlights outside into blurry yellow circles. Inside, the air was warm and smelled like coffee, onions, and something frying on the grill. Lena moved between the tables with a small notepad in her hand. She had been on her feet since the morning, but she still said, "Thank you," and "You're welcome" with a soft voice and a small smile. Her black hair was tied back in a low ponytail. A few loose strands had escaped and stuck to her forehead, but she didn't bother fixing them. There were too many other things to think about. At one table, an older man in a worn sweater sat alone with a bowl of soup. Lena stopped there first. "Everything okay, Mr. Harris?" she asked. He nodded. "Soup's good. You working late again?" She smiled. "Looks like it. Last bus home, I think." He shook his head with a small sigh. "You work too hard, kid." Lena didn't answer that. She just refilled his water and moved on. Near the counter, a young couple argued quietly over a menu. By the window, a mother tried to keep her 2 children from spilling their hot chocolate. Lena took orders, carried plates, wiped tables, and kept track of which coffee was regular and which was decaf, almost without thinking. Her hands worked on habit. Her mind was somewhere else. She thought about the envelope on her kitchen table, the hospital logo in the corner, the number inside that made her chest feel tight every time she remembered it. Another bill, another month of "we're sorry, but..." Her mother's face came to her mind. Tired eyes, soft voice, always telling her, "Don't worry about me. Just take care of yourself." And her little brother who still believed that everything would somehow work out, because that's what big sisters were for. She pushed the thought away and turned toward the door as it opened again. A man stepped inside, shaking a few drops of rain from his coat. He was tall, neatly dressed in a dark suit that looked too expensive for this old diner. No umbrella, just calm, steady steps. He glanced around once, as if he was used to walking into rooms where everyone stared at him. Most people looked at him for a second and then went back to their meals. To them, he was just another customer, maybe someone from the office buildings a few blocks away. To Lena, he was just table 7. She walked over with her notepad. "Good evening," she said. "You want a menu, or you already know?" He smiled a little, polite but quiet. "Menu, please, and a coffee to start." "Black." "Sure thing," she replied. She brought him the coffee first. He wrapped his hands around the mug like someone who had been out in the cold longer than he should. His eyes moved slowly around the room. He noticed the chipped paint near the door, the flickering neon sign outside, the old jukebox in the corner that hardly worked anymore. Then his gaze settled on Lena again. He watched her bring an extra napkin, without being asked when the kids by the window made a mess. He watched her stop by the kitchen window to ask the cook if his back was hurting today, because she had seen him stretch earlier. He saw the way she leaned down to talk to the young couple, making a little joke that made their argument stop for a moment. She had the kind of smile that looked borrowed, as if she only put on so other people wouldn't worry. Her shoulders stayed a little tense, even when she laughed. When Lena came back to take his order, he closed the menu. "I'll have the meatloaf," he said. "Whatever comes with it is fine." "Potatoes and vegetables," she replied. "Good choice. It's one of the few things in this place that doesn't lie." He raised an eyebrow, amused. "Doesn't lie?" She grinned just a little. "It looks as good as it tastes. Can't say that about everything." He let out a quiet laugh. "Then I trust your judgment." She took his menu and moved away again. At the counter, the owner of the diner stood with a calculator and a small stack of papers. His forehead was wrinkled in that way that meant bad news. Lena saw the look, understood it, and kept walking. She knew better than to ask questions he couldn't answer. The man in the suit. No one here knew he owned 6 buildings in this city. They didn't know about the private elevator that opened directly into his office, or the meetings with people whose names were in the news. Here, he was just another stranger in a booth. For once, he didn't mind that. The rain hit the windows harder. The sound of traffic outside softened as the hour grew later. Inside, the diner settled into that quiet point of the night when people either rushed home or stayed a little longer than they planned. Lena set down the plate of meatloaf in front of him. "Here you go," she said. "If it's not good, don't tell me. I need to keep believing in something tonight." He looked up at her, curious. "Long day. Just a normal one," she replied. "Sometimes that's the hardest kind." Before he could answer, the bell above the door rang again. A man in a dark hoodie walked in. The hood was pulled low over his face, hands stuffed deep in his pockets. He didn't shake off the rain. He didn't look around like a normal customer, deciding where to sit. He went straight for the counter. The air inside the diner shifted, just a little, in a way that made Lena's skin prickle. From his booth, the man in the suit watched closely, his fingers slowly loosening from around his coffee cup. The man in the hoodie didn't take a seat. He walked straight to the counter, shoulders tight, head down. His shoes left small wet marks on the floor with every step. The chatter in the diner grew softer, like someone had turned down the volume on the whole room. Lena was halfway between the booths and the kitchen window when she noticed it. It wasn't just the clothes. People came in wearing hoodies all the time. It was the way he moved, too fast, too tense, like someone holding their breath. She paused with an empty tray in her hands. At the counter, the owner looked up with his usual tired smile. "Evening. What can I get you?" The man didn't answer. For a second, he just stood there, breathing a little too hard. Then one of his hands came out of his pocket and tapped on the counter surface. His fingers were shaking. Lena's heart started to beat faster. She took a slow breath and told herself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe he was just cold. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe he... "Don't make a scene," the man said in a low, rough voice. "Just open the register." The words were not loud, but they hit the diner like a shout. The young couple at the back stopped talking. The mother by the window pulled her kids closer. Mr. Harris's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. The man in the suit put his coffee cup down very quietly and listened. The owner frowned, confused. "Sir, if you're having a bad night, we can..." "Open the register." The man's voice cracked on the last word. "Now," and nobody moves. His other hand stayed inside his pocket. He didn't pull anything out, but the way he held his arm told everyone what he wanted them to think. A few customers exchanged scared looks. Someone near the door gave a little gasp. A fork clattered to a plate. The diner, which had been full of small sounds, went almost silent. Lena felt the air change again, heavier this time. Her mind flashed back to her brother and her mother. She could almost see their faces beside the hospital bed. Another bill, another problem, another thing she couldn't control. But this moment, right now, there were people in front of her who needed someone to do something. Her legs moved before she had time to think it through. She set the empty tray down on a nearby table, took one slow step, then another, and walked toward the counter. On the way, she passed the table where the two children sat. Without looking directly at them, she reached out and gently pushed their hot chocolate mugs a little farther from the edge, as if that was the only thing she cared about. "Hey!" she said softly, standing a little to the side so she was not directly in front of the man in the hoodie, but close enough to get his attention. "Sir." His head snapped toward her. His eyes were tired and wild at the same time. Up close, she could see he was younger than she thought. Not a teenager. Not old. Just someone whose life had gone wrong somewhere. "What?" he snapped. Lena kept her voice calm, steady, like she was asking about a food order. Her hands were open at her sides. "You're scaring people," she said quietly. "We don't want trouble here. You can have the money. Just let me help. The cashier is new. He's nervous. Let him step back and I'll do it." The owner stared at her. "Lena," he whispered, "don't." "It's okay," she said, without taking her eyes off the man. "I've got it." For a few seconds, no one breathed. The man in the hoodie looked behind her. The kids were half hidden behind their mother's arm. Mr. Harris sat very still, his hand pressed flat on the table. The young couple held each other's hands under their booth. The man's jaw clenched. His hand inside his pocket trembled. "Just do it fast," he muttered. "Okay," Lena said. "I will." She moved slowly behind the counter, making sure her steps were easy to follow, not sudden. She kept talking, not asking questions, not arguing. "We had a quiet day," she said gently, her fingers moving toward the register. "There's not much inside. I'll add my tips. It's not a lot, but it's something." He blinked. "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't want anyone hurt," she replied simply. "You don't either, right?" The question hung in the air. He didn't answer, but his shoulders dropped just a little. Lena opened the register. The soft chime sounded too loud in the still room. She took out the bills and folded them with shaking fingers. To keep them from seeing her fear, she placed her hands on the counter for a moment, pressing down until they steadied. "There," she said. "Take it and go. Please, there are kids here." He grabbed the money, stuffing it into his pocket with clumsy hands. For a second, he looked like he might say something, but no words came out. He backed toward the door, his eyes jumping from face to face, like he was trying to memorize all the people who would remember him. The man in the suit met his eyes and didn't look away. Not angry, not afraid, just watching. The bell above the door rang again as the man in the hoodie pushed it open and disappeared into the rain. For a long moment, no one moved. Then sound rushed back at once. Someone started crying quietly. The mother hugged her kids so tightly they squeaked. The young couple began whispering, voices shaking. The owner shut the register with shaky hand. Lena let out the breath she had been holding and leaned against the counter. Her knees felt weak, but she stayed standing. "Is everyone okay?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Anybody hurt?" A few people answered at once. "I'm fine. We're okay. Is it over?" Mr. Harris looked at her with wide eyes. You were so calm," he said. "How did you do that?" She gave a tired half-smile. "I wasn't calm," she said. "I just pretended." Across the room, the man in the suit watched her carefully. He had seen many things in his life. Angry boardrooms, broken deals, people who talked about courage in nice speeches. But this was different. This was a tired waitress, after a long day, choosing to stand between fear and everyone else. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and tapped the screen once. It was time to call someone. This night, he knew, was not going to be just another story on the news. The police arrived faster than anyone expected. Blue and red lights flashed through the diner windows, mixing with the rain that still slid down the glass. A patrol car stopped right in front, then another behind it. For a second, everyone inside held their breath again. Lena stood near the counter, arms wrapped around herself. Now that the danger was gone, the shaking had arrived. It started in her fingers, then moved up her arms. She kept telling herself, "It's over. It's done. Everyone's okay." An officer pushed the door open and stepped inside, followed by his partner. They scanned the room quickly, eyes sharp, hands resting near their belts out of habit. "Is anyone hurt?" the first officer asked, voice firm but not unkind. "No," Lena said right away, because nobody else seemed able to speak. Her voice sounded smaller than usual. "He just took the money and left." The owner nodded, still pale. "He came in, asked for the register. He pointed at Lena. She talked to him, kept him calm." The officer's gaze shifted to her. "You're the one who spoke to him?" Lena swallowed. "Yes, I just didn't want him to panic. Or do something worse." The mother at the window spoke up. "She moved the kids away without scaring them," she said. "She kept talking like it was nothing. If she hadn't..." Her voice cracked and she stopped. The officer took a slow breath. "Okay, we're going to need statements from everyone who saw what happened. One at a time, please. We know this is scary, but you all did the right thing keeping calm." The diners began to move again. People shifted in their seats, straightened their clothes, wiped their faces with napkins as if embarrassed by their fear. From his booth, the man in the suit watched Lena carefully. There was no dramatic pose, no big speech. She just stood there, tired and small, answering questions as if she was apologizing for taking up space. An officer guided her to a stool at the counter. "Can you walk me through it?" he asked, taking out a small notebook. From the moment he came in. So she did. She talked about the way the man had walked directly to the counter, how his hands shook, how his voice sounded more desperate than angry. She explained how she saw the children near the door and moved them, how she stepped forward so the new cashier wouldn't panic. "I just talked," Lena said. "I told him we'd give him what he wanted if he stayed calm. I didn't try to argue. I tried to make it normal, like a bad joke we could all walk away from." The officer wrote quickly. "Did he say anything that stood out to you?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "He looked around," she said, like he was ashamed. "I don't think he wanted to scare anyone. I think he didn't see any other way to get money." "That doesn't excuse it," the officer said gently. "But it helps us understand." "I know," Lena replied. "I'm not saying he was right. Just, he didn't feel like a monster. He felt like a person who made the worst choice." The officer looked at her for a moment, respect in his eyes now. "You did very well," he said. "Most people can't even think clearly in situations like that." She gave a small, tired smile. "I didn't think clearly," she said. "I just thought about the kids." Behind them, one of the other officers spoke with the owner, then walked around checking the doors, the windows, and the security camera near the ceiling. "We'll pull the footage," he said. "We might be able to identify him. You're lucky no one was injured tonight." Lucky, Lena thought. It didn't feel like luck. It felt like walking on a thin piece of ice and somehow making it to the other side. When the officers were finally done, they left their card on the counter and promised to stay in touch. The lights outside moved away. The street went back to its quiet, rainy darkness. Inside, the diner felt different. The same tables, the same chairs, the same smell of coffee and fried food, but something invisible had shifted. The young couple came over to Lena before they left. "Thank you," the woman said, voice still shaking. "You saved us." "Really?" Lena shook her head. "I didn't save anyone," she replied. "We were all just lucky tonight." Mr. Harris stopped by on his way out, too. He placed a folded bill on the counter. "For you," he said. "I know it's not much, but you deserve more than a thank you." She tried to hand it back. "You don't have to." He closed her fingers around it gently. "I know I don't have to," he said. "That's why I'm doing it." Soon the diner grew quiet again. The family left. The young couple left. Only a few people remained. The man in the suit was still at his corner booth, untouched plate in front of him. His coffee had gone cold. Lena took a breath, straightened her apron, and walked over. "I'm so sorry," she said. "Your food must be cold by now. I can have them make you a fresh plate." He looked up at her, really looked this time. "Don't worry about the food," he said softly. "You've had more important things to handle." She laughed weakly. "I guess that's one way to put it." He studied her for a moment, then reached for the bill. He looked it over, took a pen from his jacket, and wrote something on it. "How much do I owe you?" he asked. She told him. He took out his wallet and slid a credit card across the table, without glancing at the amount again. At the register, the owner's eyes widened when he saw the tip. It wasn't just generous. It was unreal. He checked twice, thinking he had read the numbers wrong. Is this a mistake?" he whispered when the man walked up to sign the receipt. "No," the man in the suit said simply. "It's not a mistake." On the bottom of the slip, under his sweeping signature, he had written a small note. "For your courage and kindness tonight. Hey." The owner looked from the note to the man's face, recognition slowly dawning. His mouth fell open. "You're," he began, naming a person whose face had been in business magazines and news interviews. The man nodded once. Lena stared, confused. She didn't follow business news. The name meant nothing to her. All she saw was a polite customer who had watched everything and said very little. The owner, however, almost dropped the pen. "Sir, your company owns half this block," he blurted. "What are you doing here?" The man's eyes went back to Lena. "Having dinner," he said calmly, "and watching someone show more leadership in 1 hour than some people show in a lifetime." He turned to her fully then. "I have a question for you," he said. "If you didn't have to worry about rent or bills for a while, what would you actually want to do with your life?" Lena blinked, caught off guard. No one had ever asked her that, and truly meant it. I don't know," she said honestly, a little embarrassed. "I've never had time to think about something like that." He smiled faintly, like he had expected that answer. Then maybe, he replied, it's time someone gives you that time. The man in the suit left the diner that night with rain still falling on his shoulders, but his mind was not on the weather. As soon as he sat in the back of his car, his driver glanced at him in the mirror. "Home, sir?" the driver asked. "Not yet," he replied. "Head to the office." It was late, but the city never really slept. By the time he reached his building, the cleaning crew was already at work. Moving quietly through the lobby, he took the private elevator up, loosened his tie, and walked into his office. The city lights spread out below the giant windows, but he barely looked at them. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. "Sorry for the hour," he said when the call connected, "but I need you to do something first thing in the morning. Priority." His assistant, used to strange requests and sudden ideas, did not complain. "Tell me," he said. The man explained about the diner, the robbery, the security footage, and the waitress who had stood between fear and everyone else. "I want the footage," he said. "Work with the police or the owner, whatever is needed. Also, I want a background check on her. Basic, respectful. Nothing invasive. I just need to know what kind of life she's carrying on her shoulders." His assistant wrote it all down. "What are you planning?" he asked. The man looked out at the lights again. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I'm not walking away from this as if it was just another night." The next day, the diner looked almost normal again. The neon sign still flickered. The coffee still flowed. The regulars still came in, though now they talked quietly about last night, like it was something from a movie. Lena arrived for her shift with less sleep than usual. Her brother had waited up for her, asking if everything was okay. Her mother had held her hand for longer than usual. She had said she was fine, because she didn't want them to worry, but her mind kept replaying the scene over and over. She tied her apron, tucked a pencil behind her ear, and tried to act like nothing had changed. But things had changed. Customers kept giving her longer looks, their eyes full of a mix of gratitude and curiosity. Mr. Harris insisted on sitting near the counter so he could keep an eye on things, though his hand still trembled a little when the door opened too quickly. The owner seemed different too. He moved slower, his face more serious, his eyes always checking the door, the windows, the camera. Around mid-morning, the bell above the door rang. When Lena looked up, she felt her stomach flip for a second. The man in the suit had come back. But this time, he wasn't alone. With him walked another man in a neat gray blazer, carrying a folder, and a woman with a tablet in her hands. They didn't look like customers. They looked like people who lived in meeting rooms and offices. The diner went quiet again, but in a different way than the night before. More curious than afraid. The owner came out from the back, wiping his hands on a towel, then froze when he recognized a visitor. "Sir," he said, I didn't expect you back." "I said the meatloaf was good," the man replied calmly. Then he smiled a little. "But I'm not here for lunch." "Not yet." He turned to Lena. "Do you have a minute?" he asked her. "Both of you, actually. You and the owner." Lena looked at the busy tables. The other waitress, a short woman named Rena, gave her a quick nod. "Go," Rena said. "I'll cover for you." They all sat at a clean table near the back, away from the customers but still in view. The man in the suit placed his phone and a small notebook on the table. His assistant and the woman with the tablet sat nearby but stayed quiet. "I watched the security footage," he began. "The police were kind enough to let my team review it with them. I wanted to see that night again, not from my corner, but from every angle." Lena's cheeks warmed. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes," he replied gently. "I did. People talk about courage all the time. They write books about it, give speeches, make movies. But what I saw on that video was something simple and real." He turned to the owner. "Your business is renting the space, isn't it?" he asked. The owner nodded slowly. "Yes. The building belongs to a landlord across town. He raises the rent every few years. We're barely keeping up." The man in the suit opened the folder the assistant had brought. Inside were several documents with highlighted lines. "I already made an offer on the building this morning," he said. "My lawyers are finalizing it. The landlord accepted. In a few days, this place won't just be another rental on his list. It will be part of my company. The owner stared at him, unable to speak. I'm not raising your rent, the man added quickly. In fact, I'm fixing it at your current rate for a long-term lease. No sudden jumps. No surprises. You'll be able to plan, repair, grow. This diner has heart. I'm not interested in turning it into another cold office lobby. Lena blinked. She could hardly process the words. The owner covered his mouth with his hand, eyes shining with relief. Why? The owner asked in a shaky voice. Why would you do that? The man looked at Lena. Because of her, he said simply. Because people like her keep places like this alive. He sat back, then turned fully toward her. And as for you, he said softly, I have an idea, a proposal. Lena's heart started beating faster again, but for a different reason this time. In my company, he explained, we run training programs for staff. We talk about emergency response, about staying calm under pressure, about treating people with dignity even when things go wrong. A lot of those talks are theoretical. Nice words on slides. He gave a small shrug. You, he said, show what it looks like in real life. She shook her head quickly. I didn't do anything special, she said. I was scared. I just tried to keep everyone safe. That, he replied, is exactly what I need. Someone who understands fear and still chooses to protect others. He slid another folder across the table. I'd like to offer you a position with my foundation, he continued. We work on community safety and support for workers. I want you to help design and lead simple training sessions for small businesses. Nothing fancy, just real, practical ways to stay calm, protect people, and talk to others like humans, even in crisis. Lena stared at the folder like it might disappear as she blinked. I don't have a degree, she said. I barely finished school. I'm just a waitress. You're not just anything, he said quietly. You are exactly the kind of person I want. We can teach you whatever technical things you need. What you already have, courage, empathy, instinct. You can't buy that in any school. The owner looked between them, still in shock. Can she still work here? He asked carefully. At least part of the time. The man smiled. If she wants to, we can design it that way, he said. Flexible hours. A schedule built around her life, not the other way around. Lena opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were pages she didn't fully understand yet, but one thing was clear. This was real. A real job, real money, real change. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Don't say anything today, he replied. Take the papers home. Talk to your family. Think about it, whether you accept or not. The building deal and the lease change are already in motion. That is not a gift I can take back. It's my responsibility now. She looked up at him, eyes shining. Why are you doing this? She asked. He held her gaze. Because, he said, you reminded me what my money is supposed to do. That night, when Lena left the diner, the rain had finally stopped. The street was wet and shining, catching small pieces of light from the lamps above. She walked home with the folder pressed against her chest, as if she was afraid it might blow away. Her apartment was small but warm. The smell of tea hung in the air. Her younger brother sat on the old couch with a blanket over his legs, watching a show with the sound low. Their mother was at the small table near the window, sorting through papers with that familiar worried look on her face. You're late, her brother said, then saw the expression she wore. Hey, what happened? Are you okay? Lena closed the door with her foot, kicked off her shoes, and let out a long breath. I'm okay, she said, but I need you both to sit for a second. Her mother looked up, alarmed. Is it about the hospital bill? She asked quickly. Did they call again? It's about a lot of things, Lena said softly, but not the way you think. She sat down at the table and opened the folder. The pages looked even more serious under the yellow kitchen light. There were numbers, titles, logos. Her brother leaned over her shoulder, eyes wide. What is all this? He whispered. She told him about the man in the suit, about how he had come back, not alone but with people from his company. She explained the building purchase, the rent promise, the job offer. Her mother listened with her hand over her mouth, eyes filling with tears. Her brother kept shaking his head, like this had to be some kind of trick. Why you? He asked. There are so many people in that diner. Why would someone like him choose you? Lena swallowed, feeling the same doubt inside herself. He said it was because I stood up, she replied quietly. Because I stayed calm. Because I saw the person behind the hoodie, not just the fear. Her mother reached across the table, placing a wrinkled hand over hers. You've always been like that, she said, even as a little girl. You were the one who stepped in when others were afraid to talk. I used to worry that the world would not notice that kind of heart. She smiled through her tears. I'm glad I was wrong. They spent the next hour reading the pages together. Some things they understood, some they didn't, but two things were clear. The diner was safe from sudden rent changes, and someone very powerful wanted Lena to help shape something bigger than herself. At the bottom of one page, there was a line that made her stop. Medical support for immediate family will be fully covered under the Foundation's Emergency Care Program, she read aloud. Her mother's eyes widened. Does that mean? Lena nodded slowly. I think it means they're paying for your treatment. All of it. Silence filled the room. Then her brother wiped at his eyes quickly, pretending something was in them. You should say yes, he said, voice thick. Even if you're scared, you should say yes. Lena didn't sleep much that night. Not because of fear this time, but because of how big everything felt. The ceiling above her bed looked different, like it was higher now, like the world had opened a little. In the morning, she went back to the diner with decision inside her chest, still new and fragile but real. The man in the suit was already there, sitting at his usual corner booth with a cup of coffee. No folder this time. No extra people. Just him. When she walked up to him, her hands were no longer shaking. I read everything, she said. I talk with my family. And, he asked. She took a breath.
Thanks for watching my video. Like, subscribe and share.